A 4-year-old boy walked up to the most feared man in Chicago, pressed one tiny finger against the tattoo on his neck, and said 7 words that made 6 armed men go completely silent. That's the same as my mommy's scar. No one breathes, no one moves. Because in this world, there is only one way a woman earns a mark like that. And she doesn't survive it. The rain started at 6:47 on a Wednesday evening, and Cafe Marin on the corner of Halstead and 22nd didn't have enough chairs for all the people running in from the street. Zella noticed the boy first. He was sitting alone at the last corner table, maybe 4 years old, his small sneakers not reaching the floor, a half-eaten rice ball in front of him going cold. His jacket was too thin for October, the kind of thin that isn't a style choice. It's a budget one. He had a crayon in one hand and folded paper in the other, drawing with total concentration, like a child who had learned very early that staying quiet and staying busy was how you kept yourself safe. Zella worked the counter. 26 years old, natural hair pinned up, apron sewn with a small yellow sun patch, the kind a child makes. She watched the boy between orders, with attention, with something that looked like memory. She carried a warm cup of milk to his table. "Hey, little man, where's your mom?" The boy looked up. Big brown eyes, serious face. "She's outside. She doesn't feel well." Zella looked through the glass. A woman leaning against the wall under the overhang. Dark-skinned, soaked through, one arm wrapped around her own ribs, head down. Zella untied her apron. Her manager called, "Zella, we're slammed." 2 minutes, she said, already moving. She brought the woman inside, got her into a chair, brought hot tea, bread, a towel. The woman looked up, exhausted, embarrassed, grateful, and said nothing, just wrapped both hands around the cup. The boy watched his mother warm up, then he looked at Zella. "Thank you," he said, serious, like a grown man in a small body. Zella crouched to his level. "What's your name?" "Kale." Across the street, 3 black SUVs rolled slowly to a stop. The door opened cold. 6 men in dark suits entered Cafe Marin like weather, unavoidable, and everyone inside felt it. The last one through was Sung Hyun Lip, 34 years old, Korean, broad-shouldered, with the kind of stillness that comes from never needing to prove anything to anyone. His jaw was sharp, his coat expensive, his eyes the color of deep water before a storm. On the left side of his neck, a tattoo. Black ink, intricate, a broken chain with a single drop of blood falling from the last link. He sat in the booth nearest the window. His men fanned out without being told. The cafe went quiet, the way rooms go quiet when someone dangerous enters. Not silence, just everything becoming smaller. Sung Lip never ate in places like this, but tonight someone had failed him. A meeting canceled, a name erased. He needed 10 minutes of nothing, and this cafe had been the nearest door. He didn't see the boy coming. Kale walked right up to his table, stopped less than an arm's length away, and stared at his neck with the fearless focus of a child who hasn't yet learned who not to look at. Then he lifted his small finger and pointed, directly at the tattoo. "That's the same as my mommy's scar." 7 words. The booth went airless. Sung Lip's right hand, which had been resting flat on the table, curled slowly into a fist. His lieutenant June moved instantly. "Kid, step back." Sung Lip raised one finger. June stopped. Sung Lip's eyes came down slowly until they met Kyle's. A 4-year-old staring up without flinching, without fear. "What did you say?" Kyle pointed again. "My mommy has the same one. On her arm, right here." He touched his own forearm. "She says someone put it there a long time ago when she was very scared." The blood drained from Sung Lip's face so slowly that only June noticed. Because that tattoo, the broken chain with a blood drop, was not a design from any parlor. It was a mark used only once, given only once, to a woman Sung Lip had spent 3 years believing was dead. Who is your mother? His voice was quiet, controlled. The way a man sounds when his whole chest is on fire and he refuses to let anyone see the smoke. Kael blinked. Zella! The name landed like a stone dropped into still water. Ripples. Invisible, but everything moving. Sung Lip turned his head, slowly, toward the counter. And there she was, her back to him, wiping down the espresso machine, natural hair pinned up, the yellow sun patch on her apron catching the light. He had 3 seconds where his mind refused the information. Then she turned slightly to reach for a mug, and the left sleeve of her blouse shifted. And there it was. Faint, old, but unmistakable. The broken chain, the blood drop. June leaned close. Boss, you good? Don't move. Nobody moves. Zella still hadn't looked their way. She was sliding a plate across the counter to another customer, laughing softly at something the old man said. Her laugh, low and easy, carried across the cafe like it owned the room. Seung Lip's jaw tightened. 3 years. He had paid to have her death confirmed. He had stood at an empty grave because there was no body, only a report. And he had told himself it was real because the alternative was that someone had lied to him. And if someone had lied to him about this, then everything after it had been built on sand. Kael tugged his sleeve. Do you know my mommy? Sung Lip looked down at the boy. Same eyes, same careful stillness in the face, same way of waiting without fidgeting. His throat locked. Go back to your seat, Kael. How do you know my name? Seung Lip had no answer. He looked back at the counter. Zella had gone still. She hadn't turned around yet, but her hand on the mug had stopped moving. She'd heard his voice. Zella turned. Their eyes met across Café Marin like a collision in slow motion. Everything still, everything loud. Her face did something terrible. It didn't go cold. It didn't go hard. It simply broke open for exactly 1 second, and then shut again so fast that only someone who had memorized every version of her face would have caught it. Seung Lip had memorized every version of her face. She walked to the table. Not fast, not slow. The way you walk when your legs are working on muscle memory because your mind has gone completely offline. She stood between Kael and Seung Lip, one hand on her son's shoulder. Kael, go sit down. But mommy, now baby. Kael went. Zella looked at Seung Lip. He looked back. 12 seconds of silence that held 3 years inside them. You're supposed to be dead, he said. I know, she said. Who told you to disappear? She didn't answer. Zella. Not here. Her voice stayed even, but her hand had found the edge of the counter beside her and was gripping it. Not in front of him. Seung Lip looked at Kael across the cafe, sitting in the corner with his crayon, watching them both with giant, steady eyes. Something moved across Seung Lip's face. Too fast to name. He looked back at Zella. How old is he? The question sat between them, like a lit match over dry wood. Zella's grip on the counter tightened. She said nothing, and her silence was the loudest thing in the room. Seung Lip's breath left his body in one slow, controlled exhale. His eyes moved from her face to the boy, then back. 4, he said. Not a question this time. A calculation. Zella finally let go of the counter. Give me until close, she said quietly. I'll explain everything. You have until I finish this coffee. She went back to the counter, and not once did her hands shake where anyone could see them. 9:47 p.m. The last customer was gone. Kael was asleep on the corner bench, his crayon drawing tucked under his cheek. Zella sat across from Seung Lip at the small table by the window. rain still tapping the glass. The cafe empty except for June at the door, arms folded, back turned, giving them the room. Zella spoke first. It was Rio. Shung Lip went very still. Rio, his second in command for 6 years. The man who had handed him the death report. The man who had arranged the funeral, handled the paperwork, and then, 8 months later, quietly taken over 3 of Seong Lip's Western operations while the boss was still buried in grief. He came to me 4 months before Kale was born, Zella continued, her voice flat, like she was reading from a document she had rehearsed alone for years. He told me you had ordered my removal, that you had found out I had talked to a federal contact, which I had not, and that you considered it a death sentence. I never gave that order. I know that now. Her eyes met his. I didn't know it then. I had 4 months until I had your son, and a man I trusted telling me you wanted me gone. So I ran. Seung Lip said nothing for a long time. His thumb moved once across the tattoo on his neck, that old unconscious gesture she had always recognized, the one that meant he was fighting to stay inside himself. The mark, he said finally, the scar on your arm. Rio's men found me 6 months after Kale was born. They didn't kill me. She pushed her left sleeve up. The scar was there, the shape of the ape. Broken chain burned into her skin, not tattooed. Burned. They'd left that instead, to tell me they'd always be able to find me, to keep me quiet. Seung Lip looked at the scar for a long time. Then he looked at Kale sleeping in the corner. The boy's small chest rising and falling, his crayon drawing visible. A man in a black coat with a little boy on his shoulders, both of them laughing. Seung Lip's throat moved. John, still facing the door, spoke without turning. Boss, Rio's dinner is still running. Same location, we have a window. The temperature in the room dropped 10 degrees. Don't. Seung Lip looked at her. Not tonight, Zella said. Her voice wasn't soft. It was just tired in the way that 3 years of running alone will make a person tired. Tonight, just sit here for a minute, please. He sat. The rain kept going. Somewhere in the kitchen, a dripping faucet ticked like a clock. He draws every day, Zella said, looking at Kale. I don't know who taught him. I never drew. But he just picks up anything and draws. Seung Lip looked at the boy. What does he draw? People mostly, and he always puts the tallest person right in the middle. She smiled, but it was the kind of smile that costs something. I used to think he was drawing me. Then I realized the tall person is always in a dark coat. Seung Lip didn't respond. He was looking at the drawing under Kyle's cheek, the one with the man in the black coat and the boy on his shoulders. He doesn't know anything about you, Zella said. I want you to understand that. I didn't tell him I told him his father was a good man who couldn't stay. A beat of silence. Was that a lie? Seung Lip asked. Zella looked at him for a long time. The second part wasn't. He exhaled, set both hands flat on the table between them. I looked for you for 8 months. After the report, I still looked, because I couldn't make it feel real. I know, Rio told me. Oh, he said you were getting too close and he needed me to move again. Something passed through Seung Lip's eyes. Not rage, something older and quieter than rage. He used your life as a tool. Yes. He used my grief as a leash. Yes. Seung Lip looked at the ceiling once, then back down. I have one question. Zella waited. The night they burned you, were you alone? Her jaw tensed. Kyle was 4 months old. He was in the next room. The table between them cracked. Literally cracked. His hand had come down without him deciding to. Kale woke up, not from the crack of the table, from the silence after it. The specific quality of silence that children sense before adults can name it. He sat up, looked at his mother, looked at Sung Leap, and did what 4-year-olds do when the room feels wrong. He started to cry. Zella was on her feet instantly. She went to him, pulled him into her arms, and when she looked back over her son's shoulder at Seung Lip, her eyes had changed. You need to go. Zella, I said go. You just, that look on your face right now, that's the look that got me burned 3 years ago. That's the look that makes men around you decide things need to be handled. I will not raise him inside that. I'm not Ryo. No, you're worse. Because Ryo was afraid of you and made moves behind your back. You you make the moves yourself and everyone just falls in line. And my son does not need to fall in line behind anyone. Seung Lip stood slowly. His face had gone flat. The professional mask sliding back into place the way armor goes on. Automatic. Practiced. I won't pretend I don't know he exists. I'm not asking you to. Then what are you asking? She held Kale tighter. I'm asking you to think before you make promises. To him. Because he will believe everything you say, every single word. He's been drawing you for 2 years without knowing your name, and if you walk in and walk back out, that boy will spend the rest of his life thinking it was his fault. The silence stretched. I'm also asking you, she said quieter now, her voice fraying at the edges, to understand that I am terrified. Not of you. I have never been afraid of you. I'm terrified of what loving you cost. Because I already paid it once and I barely survived the bill. June opened the door. Cold air rolled in. Seung Lip looked at his son one more time. Kale had stopped crying and was staring at him with those giant, watchful eyes. Then he walked out. The door closed. Zella sat down on the floor of her cafe and pressed her face into her son's curls and did not make a single sound. 3 days. Rio was removed from his position on the first day. Seung Lip told no one the reason. He didn't need to. In his world, the boss doesn't explain. And Rio's sudden, total disappearance from every operation, every channel, every table explained itself. On the second day, Seung Lip sat in his office for 6 hours and did not take a single meeting. June brought coffee twice. Both times it went cold untouched. On the third day, a package arrived at Café Marin before it opened. Zella found it when she unlocked the door. A flat envelope, no name on the outside. Inside, a single document. An apartment deed 2 miles from Kyle's school, paid in full, no monthly note, just a key tape to the corner. And below the deed, a handwritten note. 4 lines. I am not walking back out. I am asking for a door. You decide if it opens. S. Zella read it 3 times. Then she folded it and put it in her apron pocket next to the yellow sun patch. She didn't call. She didn't text. But that afternoon when Kale asked her if the man from the cafe was coming back, she didn't say no. She said, I don't know yet, baby. Kale picked up his crayon, drew for a moment, then held the paper up. 3 figures this time. A tall man in a black coat, a woman with her hair pinned up, a small boy between them holding both their hands. Zella stared at it for a long time. Then she picked up her phone. It rang twice. Seung Lip. His voice came through low and immediate, like he'd been sitting with the phone in his hand. I'm here. She closed her eyes. Kyle drew something today. I think you should see it. A beat of silence. Then, quiet, careful, the sound of a chair moving. A man standing up. Tell me where. He came alone. No SUVs, no June, no men in dark suits arranging themselves around the room. Just Seung Leap in a plain dark jacket, standing at the door of Café Marin at 7:15 on a Saturday morning, hands in his pockets, waiting. Zella opened the door. They looked at each other in the doorway for a moment, just a moment, and then she stepped aside and let him in. Kyle was at the corner table, his crayon box open, his sketchbook spread across the surface. He looked up when the door opened, and when he saw Seung Lip, he did something neither of them expected. He smiled. Bright, full, instant. The smile of a child who sees someone they have been waiting for without knowing they were waiting. You came back. Shung Lip crossed the cafe. He crouched down in front of Kyle the way a man does when he's trying very hard to get something right for the first time in his life. I heard you draw, he said. Your mom said you're good. Kale pushed the sketchbook across the table. That's you. Seung Lip looked at the drawing. The tall man, the woman, the boy between them, holding both their hands. He looked at it for a long time without speaking. Then he touched the small figure in the middle. Who drew this one? Me, Kyle said. I drew all of us. All of us. Seung Lip's jaw worked once. He set a hand on Kale's shoulder, carefully the way you hold something you're afraid of dropping, and looked up at Zella standing by the counter. She was watching them. Her eyes were wet, but she wasn't crying. She was just watching the two of watching them the way you watch something you thought you'd lost come back from a direction you never expected. Seung Lip stood slowly. I know what I cost you, he said. I know what was done in my name. I'm not asking you to forgive it fast. I'm not asking you to trust me before I've earned it. He looked straight at her. I'm only asking for the same thing my son drew, to be in the picture. Zella crossed the cafe. She stopped in front of him, close enough that the world between them had finally run out of room to exist. You break his heart, she said quietly, and I will burn everything with your name on it. I know. And mine? I know that too. She held out her hand, on her palm, the apartment key from his envelope. This is where we start. Slow, honest. And he comes first. Always. Shung Lip took the key. His fingers closed around hers for 1 second before she pulled back. Kale was watching from the corner table, crayon forgotten, both elbows on the surface and his chin in his hands, completely delighted. Are you staying for breakfast? He asked Chung Lip. Sung Lip looked at Zella. She rolled her eyes, but she was already moving toward the kitchen. Sit down, she said over her shoulder. He sat, across from his son, in the corner table of a small cafe on Halsted and 22nd, while October rain tapped quietly against the glass, and a 4-year-old boy pushed a crayon across the table and said, without looking up, You can draw if you want. I'll teach you. Seung Lip picked up the crayon, and for the first time in 3 years, the most feared man in Chicago had absolutely no idea what he was doing, and didn't mind at all.